The editor called it a privilege. That was the word he used, privilege, like he was handing me a gift wrapped in black ribbon instead of a Tuesday morning assignment that meant I would spend 6 hours standing in Islamabad rain, watching important people perform sadness for cameras. Tariq, he said, and already I knew from the way he said my name, that careful front-of-the-mouth pronunciation, the one he used when he wanted something, you're the right person for this. I was the right person because I was available. I was available because I had filed my previous piece 2 days early, which I would never do again. The deceased was a retired general. Not a controversial one, not a beloved one, the kind of general who exists in the middle distance of a country's memory. Significant enough for a state funeral, not significant enough for anyone under 50 to have feelings about. His name was on 3 government buildings and a motorway interchange. I had driven past the interchange many times without once thinking about the man it was named for. My editor handed me a printed program across his desk, ivory paper, embossed header, the crest of the state in dark green slightly off-center. The way official things always are in this country, almost right, formal enough to intimidate, imprecise enough to remind you that someone did this at 11 p.m. the night before. I read it in the car on the way to the venue. The program told me the procession would begin at 0900 hours. It told me which regiment would lead, which would follow, the precise interval in seconds between each military contingent, the exact route from the presidency to the graveyard, the names of the dignitaries who would walk in the first tier, the second tier, the third. It was, I thought, a genuinely impressive document. It told me everything about the day except what any of it meant. I put it in my breast pocket. I would take it out 17 more times before noon. He was already there when I arrived. Small man. Gray suit, not the gray of mourning, the gray of efficiency, the gray of someone who buys his clothes to be forgettable. He had a laminated badge on a lanyard that I couldn't read from where I stood, a clipboard under one arm, and the expression of a man who had been awake since 4 in the morning and had decided to be quietly furious about it for the rest of his life. His name, I would later learn, was Nasir. I didn't know that yet. At that point, he was simply the man reorganizing people. He moved through the gathering crowd the way a surgeon moves through a body cavity, purposeful, bloodless, certain that everything currently in the wrong position needed to be in the right one. He redirected a TV crew 3 meters to the left without breaking stride. He physically rotated a junior diplomat, hands on shoulders, pivot, release, like adjusting a lamp. He consulted his clipboard. He made a mark. He moved on. I took out the program. Page 2 listed the order of dignitaries in the processional. I scanned it. Then I looked at the people currently being arranged in the holding area. They were not in the order on page 2. They were not close to the order on page 2. A deputy minister who should have been in the second tier was standing in what I could only describe as tier 1.5, chatting to someone whose lanyard suggested he was from a foreign embassy. A brigadier listed 3rd in the military contingent was at the water table, filling a cup, apparently unconcerned about being listed 3rd in anything. I looked at the program. I looked at the people. I looked at Nasir. Nasir was already fixing it. He approached the deputy minister with the particular smile of someone who is delivering a correction while technically paying a compliment. The minister moved. The brigadier saw Nasir looking at him from across the courtyard and walked back to his position without being asked. The man had a radius of compliance that operated on eye contact alone. I made a note. Protocol officer. Runs this like a dress rehearsal for something that already happened. It was not a charitable note. I was not in a charitable mood. I was wet. It had started raining 20 minutes ago, a Islamabad February rain that isn't dramatic enough to be poetic and isn't light enough to ignore, and the program had not mentioned rain anywhere in its 4 embossed pages, and I felt unreasonably, personally let down by this. I put the program back in my pocket. Mealy 900 hours. The program said Mealy 9x17. The procession began. I wrote down 09117 in my notebook and then felt silly for writing it down, like I was building a case against a funeral. The rain had settled into the particular rhythm Islamabad does in February, not heavy, just constant, the kind that soaks you so gradually you don't notice until you're entirely soaked, the the kind the city seems personally committed to.
The stone of the wide boulevard had gone dark. The flowers on the coffin, white, formal. The program had specified white, were holding their shape but looking unconvinced about it. The regiment came first. I will say this. Whatever you think about the theater of state funerals, the regiment was extraordinary.
They moved in a silence that wasn't the absence of sound, but the presence of discipline. Each step landed at the same moment. Rifles at the same angle, eyes fixed on the same point in the middle distance. They were not walking. They were enacting something, a grammar of loss written in synchronized bodies. I took out the program to check which regiment. It was the wrong regiment. Or rather, the program listed the Baloch regiment first, and the regiment currently leading was, based on the insignia I could make out through the rain and my inadequate understanding of military insignia, not the Baloch regiment. I squinted. A photographer next to me, a Pakistani-American woman named Dina, who I had worked alongside twice before and who had the calm competence of someone who had photographed 5 of these, leaned over without looking away from her viewfinder. "Close your program," she said. "It's never right. The regiment is wrong. The regiment is always wrong, it says here." Tariq, she fired 3 shots in quick succession. "Close the program." I closed the program. The coffin came into view, flag draped. Military green, the specific green that belongs to no other context in the world. The green that means only one thing in this country. 6 soldiers carrying it with the careful tension of men who have been told in explicit terms what will happen to them if they drop it. Behind the coffin, the family. A woman in white, widow, the program said, name given, married 44 years. I had read this detail in the car and filed it in the part of my brain marked context rather than the part marked people. 2 sons behind her, a daughter. The daughter was holding an umbrella over her mother with both hands, as if the act of shielding her from rain was the only thing keeping her upright. Behind them, the dignitaries. In something approximating the order on page 2, behind them, everyone else. I walked parallel to the procession on the press side, behind the rope line, notebook in hand, occasionally checking the program out of a habit I was failing to break. The city watched from the sides. Not large crowds, it was a Tuesday, it was raining. The man being buried was significant rather than beloved, but people, old men who had come in good coats. Women with children who had been told to be quiet and were managing it for now. A group of veterans in a mixture of old uniforms and civilian clothes, standing at attention anyway, doing it for themselves rather than anyone else. One of them was crying. I noticed him the way you notice a thing that doesn't match its surroundings. He was not performing crying, not the chin-up, visible grief of someone conscious of being seen. He was just wet-faced, staring at the coffin, somewhere else entirely. I didn't write it down. I don't know why I write everything down. It's the job. I just didn't. I took out the program instead. Read it again. Put it back. It happened 40 minutes in, which the program did not account for because the program had allocated 35 minutes for the entire boulevard portion and was already losing the argument with time. The widow had held the formation. That is the only way I can describe it. She had walked in perfect, terrible composure for 40 minutes in the rain, while cameras watched her and dignitaries flanked her, and her daughter held an umbrella over her head. She had walked like someone who had decided, before leaving the house that morning, that she would not give the cameras a single thing they could use without her permission. Then a sound, not a wail, not a sob. Something smaller and therefore worse, the kind of sound a person makes when the body overrules the decision they made at home. 4 seconds, a catch, a fracture in the breathing. She didn't fall, she didn't stop, she made that sound and kept walking. But the formation cracked. The son on her left reached for her arm and she gently, precisely removed his hand. The daughter moved the umbrella 3 inches closer to her mother's face as if she could shield her from more than rain. A brigadier 3 rows back stopped, watching the middle distance, and looked at his shoes. I stopped writing. Nasir had been walking on the outer edge of the procession, clipboard underarm, doing what he had been doing for 40 minutes, monitoring, adjusting, ensuring the choreography held. He turned at the sound. His eyes went to the widow. He took 3 steps toward her. I watched him, pen still in hand, and I thought, here it comes, the gentle redirect, the hand on the elbow. The quiet word that puts the performance back together. He reached her. He stopped. He did not touch her. did not speak to her, did not consult his clipboard. He stood next to her, one step behind and to the left, close enough that she could feel him there if she needed to, no more than that. He didn't look at her, he just occupied that space. As if he had decided his function in that moment was to be a wall she could lean against without having to lean. They walked like that for 2 minutes. I was writing again without knowing I had started. During the pause at the midpoint, a formal stop, guns fired in salute. The program had this right at least. I found myself standing near Nasir for the first time. He was not using the pause to consult the clipboard. He was standing very still, facing the coffin, and his face had done something that faces do when they forget they are being watched. He was not managing anything. He was just a man standing in the rain in front of a coffin. "I am a journalist," I asked. "You knew him." He didn't look at me. For a moment I thought he hadn't heard or had decided not to answer, which would have been completely reasonable and I would have respected it. 41 years, he said. He said it the way you say a number that is also a room you have lived in. Not reciting, reporting. I was his aide. First posting, 1983. He looked at his clipboard then. Not reading it, he had the look of a man who picks up a familiar object to have somewhere to put his hands. He was a difficult man, Nasir said, demanding, precise. He believed that form was a kind of respect, that if you cared enough about something you would do it correctly. A pause. I disagreed with him about many things. The guns fired. 12 of them in sequence, the sound arriving a fraction after the smoke. The way sound always loses that particular race. I built the program, Nasir said. He was talking to the coffin, not to me. Every detail, every interval, he would have approved of the intervals. A sound that wasn't quite a laugh, he would have changed the regiment order. I took out the program. I looked at the regiment listed first. I put the program back without saying anything. Nasir straightened. The clipboard came up, the face went back to what it had been. "Excuse me," he said, and moved away to correct something that probably didn't need correcting, and I stood in the rain and recalibrated every note I had taken since morning. The man I had been watching with professional contempt for 4 hours had built a perfect machine to get through a day that would otherwise have destroyed him. The choreography was not performance, it was survival. I had mistaken his coping mechanism for callousness. I had done this with the efficient confidence of someone who reads 4 embossed pages and thinks he understands the room. I took out my notebook. I crossed out the note that said runs this like a dress rehearsal for something that already happened. I wrote nothing to replace it. Some corrections don't have replacements. The procession reached the final stretch before the graveyard gates, 200 meters of wet stone. The cameras clustered at the end. In the designated press position, the program had specified with a small diagram on page 4, which was the one page that had proven accurate. The crowd was thinner here. The route had narrowed, and the people who had followed had mostly peeled off at the midpoint, returned to Tuesday, to offices and schools and the ordinary machinery of a city that had paused briefly and then resumed. What remained was the core, the people who needed to walk all the way. He was standing at the edge where the rope line ended and the crowd just became pavement. Old man, no uniform. No laminate, no credential that I could see. A wool coat, dark, worn at the elbows in the way of coats that have been good coats for 30 years and are still being treated as such. He was not in the program anywhere. He was not in Tier 1 or Tier 2 or Tier 3. He was just a man who had come to stand at the edge of a road. As the coffin passed him, and it passed very close, this section of the route was narrow. He reached out. One hand, placed flat on the side of the coffin, held it there for the 3 seconds it took the coffin to pass through his reach. Not dramatic, not performative, the hand of someone completing something. 2 security personnel moved immediately, the professional reflex of men trained to treat any unscheduled physical contact with the procession as a category of threat. From 20 feet away, Nasir saw it. He raised one hand, the security personnel stopped. The old man's hand came away from the coffin. He stepped back. He put both hands in his coat pockets and looked at the ground, and his shoulders did something that I will not try to describe, because I don't have the right words for it and the wrong words would be worse than nothing. The procession continued. I was watching Nasir. He was watching the old man. He didn't move toward him, didn't speak to him. Just acknowledged him, the way you acknowledge someone in a grief you recognize, because you are carrying the same weight in a different pocket. Then he turned back to the procession. Clipboard up, back to work. I thought about asking who the old man was. I didn't ask. Some things in the margin of the program are there because they belong there. Because the scheduled, embossed, precisely timed document cannot hold everything that needs to be said, and what spills over into the margins is not the excess, but the truth. I wrote one line in my notebook: the procession has a document. The grief doesn't. Then I crossed that out too. Too neat, too much like a caption. I left the page blank. The burial was brief. Not because anyone rushed it, because there are, in the end, very few words that improve upon the act itself. Prayers were said. The flag was folded with the geometric precision that military funerals require and handed to the widow in a triangle small enough to hold in both hands. She held it against her chest with the expression of someone receiving something they will never put down. The dignitaries dispersed. The cameras packed. The regiment moved back in the direction of wherever regiments go when the performance is over. I stood near the gate and turned the program over in my hands. 4 pages, embossed header, off-center crest. Every interval, every regiment, every tier of dignitaries in their designated order. Page 1, nearly accurate. Page 2, wrong regiment, disputed. Page 3, the schedule, which had been optimistic. Page 4, the press diagram, which had been the one reliable thing. 17 times I had taken it out. 17 times it had told me less than what was in front of me. I folded it, not neatly, the way you fold something you are finished with. Messiah was standing 20 feet away, a lone clipboard held at his side now rather than under his arm. A subtle thing, the hinge released, the posture dropped by 1 degree. He was looking at the grave, the fresh earth, the flowers that had survived the rain by being too formal to wilt. He would go home tonight and the program would be over. He would have done his job with such precision that no one would understand what the precision had cost. I thought about writing that in my notebook. I didn't. I thought about my father. Not a long thought, 2 words. No elaboration, Abaji's hands. And then I pressed it back down into the place where I keep things I'm not ready to write about yet. He has been gone 11 years. I have covered 7 state funerals. I have taken notes at every one of them. I have stood in the rain in good coats that are getting worn at the elbows, and I have kept my face in the professional register, and I have written things down because writing things down is the one reliable method I have found to be present somewhere without having to be present entirely. The program. You build the program so you can get through the day. You fill it with intervals and regiments and designated press positions and embossed crests that are slightly off-center, and you read it 17 times, not because it is accurate, but because holding it gives your hands something to do while the rest of you tries to survive the occasion. I understood Nasir completely. I understood him the way you understand someone when you realize you have been doing the same thing in a different profession. He had a clipboard, I had a notebook, same function, same distance kept from the same unbearable thing. The widow was still at the graveside. Her daughter had the umbrella over them both. The son was talking quietly to a mullah. The rain had softened to the kind that is almost not rain anymore, the kind that is just the air being slightly more than air. She reached down. Just the widow. One movement, unscheduled, not on any page of the program. She picked up a handful of wet earth, held it. Set it back down very carefully on the grave, not scattering it, placing it. The way you place something you're lending rather than giving up. No camera caught it. The cameras were packed. The press were at the gate filing copy on their phones. Dina had already left. I had seen her go 20 minutes ago, battery pack in hand, already editing. I saw it. Nasir saw it. The old man in the worn coat, still standing at the far side of the grave, saw it. 3 people. Nothing about it would appear in my filed piece. My editor wanted 800 words on the processional, the dignitaries, the regiment, the official statements. He would get 800 words on the processional, the dignitaries, the regiment, the official statements. That is the program. The program is not wrong. It is just insufficient. It was always going to be insufficient. The man who built it knew this better than anyone, and he built it anyway because insufficient structure is still structure, and structure is how you make it from the gate to the grave without making that sound, that 4-second fracture sound in front of the cameras. I put my notebook in my jacket pocket. Then I took out the program, unfolded it, smoothed the crease on the blank inside of the back page. The one space the program had not filled with intervals and regiments and tiers of dignitaries. I wrote 3 things.
The sound the widow made, not a description of it, just that sound. The old man's hand on the coffin, Abaji's hands. I folded it back up, breast pocket, walked to the gate.
Dina was sitting on a low wall outside, editing on her laptop, umbrella propped against her knee. She looked up as I passed. "Get what you needed." I thought about it for a moment. "Got what I needed," I said. "Filed what was asked for, not the same thing," she nodded. She had covered enough of these to not need an explanation. I walked to the car. Driver had it running, heat on.
I sat in the back and I did not take out my notebook. I did not take out my phone. I put my hand in my breast pocket and held the folded program through the fabric of my jacket for the 40-minute drive back to the city. The program was useless. I held it the whole way home.